guys, last two that we are going to solve today are solutions to the equation where you have 2 cosine 3x minus 1. So what do you do if you have something inside the cosine? So what we're going to do is we're actually going to do a little bit of substitution. So I'm going to let u equal 3x. Okay, so I'm going to write it as 2 cosine u minus 1 equals 0. All right, so we're going to now solve this for cosine u. So I'm going to add 1, divide by 2, so I get cosine u is equal to positive 1/2. So then I approach this just like I would for the other ones. I say, where does my x value equal 1/2? And that's at pi over 3 and at 5 pi over 3. Now, because it's a u in here, we're saying u equals, so if it was a theta, we would say theta equals, and this time because it's a u, we're going to say u equals. But we can't box this in as our final solution because my original equation was in terms of x, so we're going to double back and substitute back in what my u is, so 3x equals pi over 3, and 3x equals 5 pi over 3. And so my final answers are going to be, I have to look at this and get the x by itself. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. Dividing by 3, remember, is like multiplying by 1/3. So I'm going to divide by 3, which is like multiplying by 1/3. So I get my two solutions to this equation are going to be pi over 9 and 5 pi over 9. So that's the added step that we would do when you have a something inside of your trig function. So same idea, we are going to approach it with number 2. So we're going to let u equal x over 2. So we're going to do 3 tan u plus 3 equals 0. And we're going to solve for tan u. So I'm going to minus 3 and divide by 3. So I get tan u equals -1. So I think back to my unit circle and I say, all right, where does my tangent is y divided by x? Where does my y divided by the x give me a -1? And that's at 3 pi over 4 and 7 pi over 4. But just like we would say, if this were a theta, we would say theta equals 3 pi over 4 and theta equals 7 pi over 4. We're going to say u equals 3 pi over 4 and u equals 7 pi over 4. So my last step, I started out with x in the original equation, so I need to finish off with x equals as my final. So I'm going to sub back in what my u is. So I'm going to do x divided by 2 equals 3 pi over 4, and x divided by 2 equals 7 pi over 4. And then I'm going to solve, multiply by 2, multiply by 2, multiply by 2, multiply by 2. So my two solutions are going to be 3 pi over 2, because 3 pi over 4 times 2 is 3 pi over 2, and 7 pi over 2. And that is my final solution.